So let's move to our next game, Ryan, and that is another very interesting matchup that involves the Pac-12 and the SEC. There's two of these matchups this weekend, and in my opinion, I don't honestly think either of them are going to end up very well for the Pac-12 team. But this is one that you and I disagree on. That is number 7 Utah heads to Gainesville to take on the Gators. I'm going to let you kind of start off with your analysis and thoughts on this game, and
Yep.
let you give the first prediction, and then I'll kind of come up with sort of my why I see it a little bit differently.
I think it's going to be a great football game. I really do. I think this is going to be a closely contested affair. Whether it goes to Utah or it goes to Florida, I think Florida is going to have a kind of a comeback season a little bit, as far as they're going to be a lot more competitive than they were last year. We know, when everything was kind of, we understood where things were going under Mullen there at the end there, and the team gave up, if we're being completely honest. I think they're going to be a competitive football team. I think Billy Napier was a good hire. I think he's a good football coach, and I think they have some pieces. We talk about Anthony Richardson on the offensive side of football. Is he able to take a huge step? He's obviously incredibly talented. You have guys on defense like Brenton Cox and Ventrell Miller that have played a ton of football. So I think this is going to be a really close game. I ultimately just think Utah has a better team. I mean, just top to bottom. And I think that you have a head coach in Kyle Whittingham that knows what he's doing, and a Morgan Scalley that knows what he's doing. I know the target's on their back a little bit, but I took Utah in a tight affair because I think that they are better equipped from a coaching experience perspective and a experience perspective from players, where I think that they're going to come out of this one 27-23, a little bit of a more lower scoring game, because I expect Utah to, again, have a really good defense. I expect Florida to have a much improved defense and a better overall team in whole. But I'll take Utah. I opted for the experience factor in this one.
I get that. I do. My whole thing is I feel like Utah is being pushed based on a couple games as opposed to what their overall body of work was. They destroyed Oregon twice. I mean, just physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every way possible, destroyed Oregon last year. It was the weirdest thing, because then you thought, like, when the rematch, Oregon's going to be mad and they're going to have a little chip on their shoulder and they're going to come out and be ready for Utah. Nope. Same, it was rinse and repeat. And then, of course, they battled with Ohio State for 4 quarters and just got outgunned. They were missing a lot of dudes. And so I understand the Utah hype. And Ryan, as you very well know, I'm a big Kyle Whittingham fan for a lot of reasons. Number one, his teams are usually really tough. Everybody has those years where you're young and you're still trying to rebuild the culture and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, they're a tough team. But they've just been a team, in my opinion, that doesn't often kind of come out in the big games and play well. And that's kind of been a bit of a knock that I've had on them in recent years. And it's kind of like, remember a couple years ago when everybody was talking about Utah, being a team that was going to go out, and I think it was 2019, and they're going to go out and they're a borderline playoff team because their only loss was early to USC, and they were blowing everybody out. And they went to the Pac-12 title game, and I told people, this is not going to – Oregon is going to smack them. And that's exactly what happened. I like their talent in spots. I don't love their talent overall. I think Cameron Rising is a gamer. I think he's a good athlete. He can run a little bit, more of a scrambler than a runner. He's nice arm, solid player. I love Tavion Thomas at running back. I think their line should be good. I don't love their weapons on the perimeter. And I think they lost some really important players from a defense that I didn't love. And this is still the same team last year that got beat kind of convincingly by BYU, and then a week later lost to San Diego State. And this is also a team that went on the road and lost to Oregon State last year. So I'm not willing to overlook that because they beat Oregon, right? And that's kind of where I come from on this. And so I think the other thing for me is Florida was a dumpster fire last year. I know some people don't like that expression, but they were. They didn't all of a sudden stop being talented. This is still the same team that played in the SEC title the year before and was a top 10 team the 2 years before that. Now, Dan Mullen did not recruit well enough. I think that's one of the reasons that he got fired. He didn't recruit the way he should have. So I don't think Florida is as talented now as maybe they were his first couple years, but they are still talented. And I think being in the swamp, I think they're going to be a physical football team. That's the one thing Billy Napier's teams were at Louisiana Lafayette. The thing that makes me believe he's going to transition better to the Power 5 than some other coaches like him is a lot of coaches win, Ryan, because they get gimmicky. And then you get to that level, and it's like, well, you're gimmicky, but you're getting your face smashed in the trenches, and you can't win. Billy Napier's teams at Louisiana won like an SEC team. They could run the ball and they could stop the run. They weren't sexy, but they were physical and well coached. And I think that translates really well. Here's the other reason. Todd Grantham was just flat out brutally bad as a defensive coordinator. He was to Florida what Brian Van Gorder was to Notre Dame his last couple years. Not as a human being. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
right.
The stuff they were doing was just so obvious. Like, what are you doing? Like, what made you think that was smart? There were so many things that Dan Mullen did last year. Like, hey, we've got this really talented young quarterback. So let's have him make his first start of his career against, let's look at our schedule, Georgia, and then not start in the rest of the year. It's like there were just so many dumb things that they did. I don't think this team was as bad as they looked. I think you're going to see a very similar Notre Dame 16-17 jump from Florida this year. I'm not saying they're going to win 10 games because their schedule is tough, and they don't have the talent level that Notre Dame had in 2017, in my opinion. I just don't think Utah is the seventh best team in the country. And I think they've got some holes, and I think going to the Swamp and winning that game is going to be a challenge. So at the end of the day, Ryan, even though I respect Utah a lot, I see this being a 27-20 Florida victory. Pac-12 is going to go 0-2 against the SEC in these two marquee matchups. I feel more confident in my Georgia-Oregon pick than I do this one, but that's how I see this one playing out.
I mean, either way, you think it's going to be a good football game.
I do.
Right? Like you don't think that it's going to be like, you don't think that it's going to be Florida up by 14 and then there's a late touchdown to make it look more respectable. Like
no. I mean,
tight contest.
If something like that does happen, it's because Florida scores late to make it that way. Like Utah's got to go for it on fourth down with 5 minutes left. Florida gets it, goes down and goes up by 2 touchdowns. Utah punches one in late. But I think it'll be a competitive game. I'd be surprised if it goes. And if anyone does win convincingly, I would say it would be more likely Utah because Florida's just not there yet. If I'm wrong about Florida, then I think Utah's got a chance to have some success against them. I just, for me, Ryan, I'm not saying that Utah doesn't have this, but I have just kind of always felt like to win these kind of games, it's not against a team like Florida. Florida's going to be, I think, physical. Where I think Florida lacks talent right now is on the perimeter of their of their offense, of their defense. I don't think the perimeter of their defense is what it used to be. The problem is I don't think Utah has the players to expose that the way that you need to win this kind of game. That's kind of my concern. They've got nice receivers, but they have complementary receivers to the run game, not necessarily like that guy that can just run by you all day and make big plays. And I think in order to beat an SEC team on the road like this, you've got to be able to rip off some big plays in the pass game. And I just don't think Utah has the horses to do that. That's another big part of this too, that I think is going to make it a little bit more manageable for Florida State in this game. Because I think the only way Florida loses, in my opinion, is if Utah just jumps on them early and they just they just get overwhelmed. I think if this is going into the fourth quarter, I think this is going to be a game that I think Florida pulls away because I think they're going to be able to physically compete with Utah, but I think in the end Florida's athletes are going to be just a little bit better than Utah's athletes, and that's what's going to get it done. And I also think Anthony Richardson is going to make some plays with his legs in this game, and that's going to then result in because I see him like having some really impressive runs, and then like third quarter, the 3-point game, he's running around. Utah safety's like, oh, here he goes again, comes down and and then he throws it over their head for a big play. I think something like that's going to happen. That's more likely to happen for Florida than it is for Cameron Rising. You know what I mean? That's just kind of where I come with it.
Don't disrespect Bad Moon Rising, man.
Not about that. Not about that at all. So that's kind of how I see it.